We heard this morning that late last night, around midnight, we had an agreement. Republicans, Democrats, the White House getting together, leadership, all deciding that they had a way forward on both the budget or spending through 2017 and also on raising the debt ceiling, although there are still some questions about it. We wanted to get the perspective from both sides of the aisle. We had Democrat John Yarmuth earlier. Let's go to Representative Scott Rigell now. He's a Republican from Virginia's 2nd Congressional District. He tweets at Rep. Scott Rigell and joins us on POTUS. Congressman, welcome back. Thanks for being here today.
Good to be back. An interesting day. We'll have to see how this unfolds.
Yeah, and this is the question. Where were the votes last night? In other words, you had a meeting, at 7 last night? Was that correct? Or?
Well, actually, it was 6 o'clock prior to votes. And, Tim, I don't think you'll be too surprised. There was a general pushback from some of the members who identify themselves as more conservative. Then, many spoke in favor of it. Actually, I found myself, interestingly, I typically don't speak in conference, but when we got to the point where we could ask questions, I was near a microphone, and Kathy opened it up for questions, and there was this pause, because I think we're all processing what he said, and I needed clarification on one thing, and that was our defense budget. Mm-hmm. And so I immediately went to the microphone. I said, Mr. Speaker, I listened intently here, but it sounds to me like we haven't fully funded defense. He stood up and said, well, the gentleman yield. We went back and forth a little bit, very helpful and respectful, but we're $13 billion short, according to my math, from what our senior uniformed and just civilian leadership says is really necessary in this dangerous world, Tim. So that's fundamentally, that gives me pause. I really want to try to help leadership here, but this is really kind of like, I was thinking about how I phrased this morning. To me, it's like fiscal Vicodin or something, that it gets you over kind of the pain, but we're still not fundamentally addressing the larger issue, and that's our fiscal trajectory.
Specifically on budgets for defense, is this something that over 1 year, 2 years, it's falling short? Is it falling short of what was in the original defense, national defense authorization?
Yeah. And interestingly here now, because let's see how this unfolds, Tim, 105 Republicans signed a letter from Mike Turner saying that they weren't going to fund anything less than 561, which is the president's request for the base budget. This bill does not get us there. It gets us to 548. Now, interestingly, about almost 2 weeks ago, I introduced America First, which is I think a better alternative, or maybe layered atop what the speaker has proposed here would be even better. It's H.R. 3777, and it's got a balance of mandatory spending reforms and some revenue. And, I'll tackle that issue, but it's a larger bill. It would save us, according to the Center for the Responsible Federal Budget, about $2.5 trillion over 2 decades. And importantly, it gets us to actually just over what the president has requested on defense. I sure would like for that to get traction. I was so pleased the Washington Post reached out to us. We hadn't even reached out to them, but they wrote a really nice editorial on my bill this past Sunday, put it right under the masthead, and said, hey, this is a solid solution. It got great traction down in the Hampton Roads region from the Virginian pilot. They wrote a full editorial on it and put it on the front page the day before. So it's a solid bill. It's just hard to get. I'm a fiscal guy, and I am continually bringing up that our fiscal trajectory is not good. Our risk of our debt relative to our economy is in the danger zone. And it's hard to get the attention of not only the American people, but of leadership on that matter.
I just want to quickly clarify something before I go to another part of this discussion, which is the 561 you mentioned, the $561 billion in spending the president requested. This most recent Authorization Act got to it, but it used overseas contingency operations. And is that 548, does that include OCO numbers? Or
no,
that's a straight budgetary number.
Well, it should be. The president was right in bringing up that that's really a budgetary gimmick. I'll give him that. I think he's profoundly wrong in vetoing it over that particular issue. When I said the Vicodin little analogy, Tim, what I was trying to make the point there is that we are so accustomed to poor performance at Congress that when something like this comes along, we're all celebrating it. And I told the speaker last night that I appreciated his leadership in this matter, and I meant it. That said, we can do better. And perhaps I live on this razor's edge of naivete and idealism, but I'm convinced we've got to do better and wrestle with these bigger issues and get off the misuse, the deliberate misuse of OCO money.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good for our country, and it's not good for our Department of Defense.
Representative Scott Rigell is with us, a Republican from Virginia. So this budget deal is going to be voted on by the full House, I guess. Is it today or tomorrow? Tomorrow.
Yeah, they say they're whipping it this morning, and I guess if they've got the votes, maybe they can bring it to the floor to maybe today or at the latest tomorrow. And just look at that process. When my fellow colleagues stood up and said, "Hey, this isn't right," you're going to drop this bill at midnight. It's a technical compliance with the 72 hours, but this is done so that we really don't have a chance to work through it. Tim, look, I shoot straight with people. When our conference gets something right, I say so, and I'm proud of our conference many occasions. That if we're not doing things right, I'm going to say that as well, and I don't appreciate it either. How this thing is being brought to the floor like this, and we can do better.
Congressman, the debt ceiling is going to be raised also, and this would get beyond, like the budget does, past the election of 2017, actually the inauguration of the new president in 2017. But it seems like there's also there's still no provision yet for transportation. Is that correct? Is that still looming?
That's correct. There's nothing. Tim, and really in preparation for this interview, I got up and was reading the bill. That is really still unresolved. I mean, we need a definitive solution. I think some of this repatriation, there's some creative things out there. John Delaney, colleague of mine from Maryland, has got some creative ideas on these kind of things, and we've got to deal with transportation, but it's not addressed to the level that is sufficient to the challenges that we face in infrastructure at this point.
Let me get your take on this, too, Congressman, and that is Speaker Boehner leaving, Paul Ryan coming in. Your thoughts on both of those men?
Well, I don't. There's not a person with a bigger heart and a more genuine love for our country than John Boehner. I mean that, and he really cares, and he indeed is a conservative. He was dealt a really rough hand, and I will respect him, and I appreciate his leadership and the sacrifice he made for the country. All right, let's pivot to our incoming, what I hope to be is our new speaker. I think the world of him. I had the privilege of serving on budget with him. He's smart. People like him, and that really is important. It's like the grease that kind of gets things done. And look what he's done, in some of the trade agreements. I mean, he's really got the ability to put together a conservative, a center-right message and make it appealing to a diverse America. And he talks a lot about bringing conservative thought to non-conservatives, and that's the business that I'm in. I want to take a hard P and turn him into a thoughtful independent, take a thoughtful independent and move him over a click or two to a fiscal conservative. And I think he's in that business too, and I respect him, and I appreciate him answering the call. It's inspiring. I'm ready to go.
All right. Congressman, I do appreciate you joining us this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tim.
Always good talking to you. Representative Scott Rigell is a Republican from Virginia's 2nd District, discussing the developments in the past 24 hours. Been really extraordinary on the budget. We now have an agreement, although it has to be voted on by both the House and Senate membership, but the Republican and Democratic leadership in the White House getting together to craft this deal on that spending. The long-term spending bill takes us to the end of the next fiscal year, which will be the October of 2017. October 1st is when we would need some new spending. And then the raising of the debt ceiling, which takes that off of the table too. But still, transportation is in front. And Congressman Rigell, by the way, he tweets at Rep. Scott Rigell, Rigell.